I'm creator and host Kat Lively, and welcome to Calling Old Hollywood, the podcast where because of the future, the past will not be forgotten. For more updates, news, and information, visit callingoldhollywood.com. And don't forget to visit the YouTube channel, where you can watch the podcasts and step back in time with me as I take you to classic Hollywood and historic locations. Without further ado, I bring you this week's episode. Welcome to another episode of Calling Old Hollywood. I'm your host, Kat Lively, and my guest this week is Ryan Cassidy. Thank you so much for joining us. We're here at the world-famous Formosa Cafe. We're here to talk about Ryan's brand new book, James Cagney Was My Babysitter. I have so many questions about this, but first, let's talk about you.
Okay.
You are part of a Hollywood dynasty, the Cassidys. You have, I'll say one thing, I have heard nothing but just amazing things about all of you.
Thank you.
I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone last night, and he said, there's something about the Cassidys that they're just all so unbelievably kind, you know? And that's like a tremendous, you know, for Hollywood and showbiz.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think it comes from our mother.
Yes.
You know, my mom is, I say this, I tell everybody this, she's from a small town, and she, even though she became a big movie star, she had small town sensibilities that she instilled in my brothers and I. She kept it simple, she kept it real.
Yeah.
And she was grounded from day one, and she instilled that in us. And she always, you know, told us to treat other people the way we want to be treated.
It's a golden rule.
And that's the way I operate. I think that's the way my brothers operate. And we love each other. We've been through a lot of ups and downs, like every family has, like everybody has. And we've come through it on the other end with holding each other's hands or loving each other and hugging each other and being there for each other. Mm-hmm. And we keep it real. And that's all due to my mother.
That's some wise words, you know. I think it's where is she from specifically?
She's from Charleroi, Pennsylvania,
Yes.
a little tiny town called Smithton. And she's an only child. She was named after Shirley Temple.
Yes.
And as you know, she was starred in Oklahoma. It was her first big musical. Mm-hmm. Her mother and father saw that she had a voice, and they helped her develop it along the way. Yeah. And after a few pageants and voice lessons and all, she auditioned for Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, and landed the leading role in Oklahoma.
And she did the foreword and the afterword for the book.
Yeah.
Miss Shirley Jones. I mean, that's no small name. She's just, and I see the pictures you post with her so much. She's so radiant, and she looks so sweet. And you know, to carry all of that and to instill all of that in her children, the kindness and the humility, because Hollywood can be very crass, and to maintain that kind of humble quality is. I think very, very commendable.
Yeah, she, she never pushed any of us into show business. Her theory was that you go out, you work, and you find what you love to do. And she would always tell me or my brothers, if it be that you're pumping gas for a living or working at a gas station or a hardware store or whatever you're doing, I will support it and love you as long as you're happy. And she wanted us all to get a college, education. None of us did. Our kids did, but my brothers and I didn't. But we went on to having our own success in show business, and we're still doing it. And my mom's going to be, she's 89. She'll be 90 in March of 2023.
A young 90.
So. We're very blessed to have her, and she has brought a lot of happiness to a lot of people, and we all know that she has. But at the end of the day, she's just our mom, and we are now giving back to her as much as we can as her sons to make sure she's happy and she's at peace with herself, and she's doing very
sweet.
well. Yeah.
How was her Mother's Day? Speaking of,
it was incredible.
Very relevant.
We all spent Mother's Day with her and took her out to lunch, and got to see her grandkids, and it was pretty great. We actually recently went to the Grauman's Chinese Theater to see The Music Man.
Yes.
And they showed it part of the Turner Classic Movie Festival, and brought her down, and we had a great time. It was wonderful. It's pretty great to sit in the Grauman's Chinese Theater with your mom, who was in Oklahoma, and watch the movie after all these years.
Being in those seats and sharing that experience,
Yeah.
that's
It
just
was
amazing.
pretty special.
Yeah. So those memories, your father as well, Jack Cassidy.
My dad.
Household name, you
Yeah.
know. To share some memories about, can you share some memories about him?
Oh, I could share a lot of memories about him. My memories are actually very, very positive with regards to my dad. You know, my dad wasn't around a lot when I was a little boy. He was a theater actor. He was a Broadway stage actor. And he also became a world-renowned television film actor later, through the years. He was only on this earth for 49 years before he passed away. But in that 49 years, the body of work that he created as a performer was pretty amazing. He won a Tony Award for a musical called She Loves Me, 1964. And he won for Best Distinguished Supporting Actor, or Best Actor in 1964 on Broadway. I have his Tony Award. And then he went on to do a series of guest starring roles in well-known television shows. He did a series of. He was one of the greatest villains on Columbo that ever existed, I think. And he did a series of movies. He did a movie, not actually the year right before he passed away, called W.C. Fields and Me, where he played the life of John Barrymore with Rod Steiger, who played W.C. Fields. And he was pretty great in that movie.
It's phenomenal.
I remember him from being on the set of Columbo at Universal with him when he was portraying the villains that he did so well with. And my memories, though, are all very positive. I remember my father taking me to New York and taking me to the home that he grew up in. He came from a railroad family in Long Island, and so his family wasn't in show business. But at a young age, he was either going to go to seminary school and pursue becoming a Catholic priest, or he was going to be an actor. And he chose to be an actor.
He chose the theatric. Well, I guess they're both technically theatric in a way,
but he was, my dad, when he met you, he made you feel like you were the most important person in the room, and he had an ability to he loved telling stories, and he was incredibly charming and incredibly funny, had an uncanny sense of humor. And those are, my memories, even though, again, they were sporadic, because I was the youngest in the family. I think there was a few ups and downs with my mother and father. He was separated on several occasions from my mom, and then they finally got a divorce. But he was around towards the end and took me places and did things with me that I'll never forget that were amazing. So my memories are all very positive.
You'll have to do a book about those memories,
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. And he passed when you were 10?
He passed away when I was 10 years old. December the 12th, 1976 is when he passed away.
Yeah.
He died very tragically in a fire, which was an accidental situation that happened where he fell asleep with a cigarette and it caught on fire, and he died from smoke inhalation. So,
I'm so sorry.
Very unfortunate. But he's left a lot behind. He's left a huge family, and he lives on through all the different wonderful characters he played on television shows that I see from reruns. He lives on through what he's left that my brothers carry with them, that I carry with me, that my nieces and nephews have. So it's as if he's alive through them and through us.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I feel very, very fortunate.
And that's got to be such a sentimental, I've spoken with a lot of children of certain stars, and once they, their parents have passed, having these kind of having the films and having the television shows or interviews or things where you can go back and kind of, it's like they're there in a way, but
Right.
also sharing them, because, you have a daughter. It's like,
Yeah.
what does she think of all of it?
She loves it. My daughter is so curious about everything, and she is just, she is a magnet for information and family history and wanting to know, all the things that my father did as a performer, and she's taken an interest in performing. She was just in a school version of Oklahoma, and
That
she played
had full circle.
She played 3 different characters. She played Lori, she played Ruth Ann, and she played Aunt Eller. And my mother, her grandmother, came down to see her in it. It was pretty great.
That had to be such a full circle,
It was amazing.
proud moment.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
And
that's just amazing.
there's things about her that there were some photos that I captured of her and in her outfit, from her Lori outfit, next to my mother.
I saw the side by
mother,
side.
Yeah, and it's remarkable how much they
Uncanny.
resemble each other.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Going back to your dad
Right.
for just a second, and the influence in all of this,
Yeah.
is there a piece of advice that he gave you that sticks out, that you've kept with you?
I remember my dad. My dad worked with a lot of very, very talented people, actors, writers, directors. He was an artist. He was a sculptor. My dad was multi-talented. He had incredible penmanship from Catholic school that he would write these beautiful letters in this incredible penmanship. He just had so much talent. I remember him saying that if you have a talent, whatever it may be that you're good at, that it will prevail at some point. That stick with it. Don't give up on it. And my father saw talent, and when he saw it in somebody, and he may not even known who they were, he would let them know that they have something and build on that.
It's brilliant.
And he just was. He would really build people's confidence up if he saw something that was special in them. And he met the actor. He met the director, Steven Spielberg, when Steven Spielberg was really young, and he was directing television at Universal when he first started there. And he directed my father in the Columbo episode, and my dad met him. And Steven was maybe in his early 20s. And my dad came home like the first day after shooting one of the first few scenes that they were doing for the episode. And he mentioned to my mom, he said, I'm this young director that I'm working with in Columbo is a really talented guy, and I see he's got some great vision, he's got some great ideas, and I'm going to bring him home for dinner one night. My mom said, great. And he came and brought him home for dinner one night. And he told Steven, he said, you've got some great camera angles, and your shots, the way you set them up are just really creative, really wonderful. I love what you're doing.
What a moment.
And sure enough, he saw something. So
He was great.
I was fortunate in that I got to meet Steven many years ago, and he just had the nicest things to say about my dad.
That's so
Pretty
sweet.
great. That was a special moment.
That's the best,
Yeah.
and that goes back to
Yeah.
what I've heard from a few different people, mutual friends, and go, just nicest people in the world. Like,
Yeah.
that's, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
he paid his dues, and he, Steven worked with some really amazing actors, and God knows he's one of the greatest directors in cinema.
Yeah.
And his legacy is incredible. What he's left behind, what he continues to leave behind. So anyway, to answer your question about my dad, when he saw talent in somebody, he let them know that, and he would instill confidence in them and say, don't give up on that. That's something really good there.
I mean,
So.
when you're passionate about something, like both of your parents, the bodies of work, and there's also something to just say with like the gracefulness, with the whole reputation, all of it, not everyone is can do that,
Yeah.
it's so that there's just a lot of respect and a lot to be said for all of that,
Yeah.
and which is why they are friends with people like James Cagney.
Yeah.
And this, I want to know where did the
inspiration come?
that moment where you said, okay, I'm writing this book?
Well, I never forgot about that afternoon with him. And he drew this wonderful, charming caricature of
on the
this,
back.
the dancing gnome, if you will, or the dancing man from the forest.
Leprechaun.
And I remember the day when he pulled out his
So
pad
sweet.
and his pencils and he started drawing. And when he signed that to me and he gave it to me, it traveled with me throughout the years at every location I lived at. And I would stare at it and I would think, I still can't believe that I spent the afternoon with Jimmy Cagney or James Cagney.
As a child.
As a kid.
I mean,
he was so down to earth. He was so real. He was so loving and warm and kind and insightful, and saw that my parents were going through a separation at this very time, that I was there that day. My dad and mom were separated, and my father picked me up and was going to take me to the movies or something, and something came up. He had to go to the Cagneys anyways because they were friends. Long story short, when Jim found out that Dad was going to have to take me home, he said, why don't you leave your son Ryan here, and then whenever you're done with whatever you have to do, come back and get him. Yeah. And sure enough, I spent several hours at his house, and I was a little timid as a child, and I wasn't sure about being in somebody's home that I didn't know. And
were you familiar with his work on screen?
A little bit.
All the bad guys.
A little bit. What I was familiar with was the fact that he was this incredible tap dancer, and then he'd done this body of work as a tap dancer and a performer, whether it be Yankee Doodle Dandy or the number he did with Bob Hope on stage. I loved tap dancing as a little boy. Mm-hmm. I thought it was just such an amazing form of dance, and I just was mesmerized by tap dancers. So I remember asking him as a little boy when I was at his house, do you still tap dance, or would you mind tap dancing for me? And he kind of looked at me like, kid, I don't really have it in me to do that anymore. But he says, I can do something else for you. He says, I'm going to break out a pad and some pens, and I'm going to draw some pictures for you. And that's what he did. And he loved drawing. He loved painting. That was his hobby. And so
I love the way that the book encompasses him with like the animals and just nature. Yeah. And I loved the part with the owl, with the owl in the tree that wasn't there. That just this imaginative spirit of this man who clearly just had such a grasp on reality, enough to grasp that you can make it anything you want. I think that's brilliant.
Well, he had a love for animals, and he was a great storyteller. And when we were leaving that day, my father was coming back to get me. He said, come here for a second. I want to introduce you to my friend who lives up in the tree. I said, what friend is that, Mr. Cagney? He says, my friend the owl. He says, I look up there in that tree. You see? Go look up there on the branch. You see him? That's my friend. He's an owl. He lives up there. I talk to him every day. Every day I talk to that owl. He sits right up there on the tree. And I was like, really? Wow, I don't really see an owl. I didn't say that to him, but apparently there was an owl there.
Say, okay, there's an owl.
I said, okay, Mr. Cagney.
Amazing.
Say hi to him. That's him. You see him? He's perched right up there in the corner of that tree.
So
I talk to him every day. He sees you, Ryan, but you may not see him. He was an incredibly imaginative man that just had a love for animals, had a love for the environment, and made you feel important. He didn't make it about him that day. He made it about what my interests were and how he could bring together his interests and how they would maybe fit into what I liked. And that was something that was very important at that time for me. He had the insight.
That goes such a long way as a child too, because they're so impressionable at those ages.
Yeah.
So when someone
Absolutely.
So when someone older, someone so established, Jimmy Cagney, it's like when what do you like? What do you, that makes such a difference, especially to a child when you're not really taken seriously.
And I was young. I was 7. I was a kid, and my parents were going through a separation, so things weren't perfect at home. My mother was always a great mother. My father was doing the best he could at the time. But yet there was still this sort of like, I didn't know whether I was coming or going, where I was going. And I think he wanted to kind of see where I was at, and he wanted to make me feel or let me know that I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And even though he wasn't my dad, he was still a role model or somebody that I maybe looked up to, or that I felt that this man's been around a long time and he knows my parents, and he's going to, he's basically telling me it's going to be okay and that I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that was something that I never forgot.
And fueling you even further with this imaginative, perception of life and creativity and just, things that really truly matter. It's like, we're talking about the animals and just, painting and, that's such that's so magical,
Absolutely.
Does your daughter love the book?
My daughter loves the book.
I
My
can
daughter
imagine.
she was very, motivating me all the time to finish it. She's like, Dad, you got to finish the book about James Cagney.
How long did it take to write?
The idea I had 25 years ago to make this book, and the book took about almost 2 years to make.
Mm-hmm.
We started it in 2020, and Johnny and I finished it 2021, 22 is when we got all the illustrations together.
The illustrations too, is just top notch, and they're so they encapsulate it so much.
She's a wonderful illustrator, and she really captured the essence of that afternoon in those pictures and illustrations, and I was really proud of how it turned out. And I would wake up in the morning, and the publishers would send me new illustrations for me to approve of. I just thought they were wonderful, and she really got it.
Incredible. There's nothing like that when someone gets the vision and they're able to kind of ride with it,
Yeah, absolutely.
So it worked out so well.
And later in life, Jim had spoken to my mother after my dad had passed away and asked how I was doing, and mentioned her. And I mentioned it in the book that, or my mother did in the afterward, that he had asked how I was doing and told my mom. He said, your son Ryan is an insightful young child, and I see creativity in him, and I enjoyed my afternoon with him, and I'll never forget that. And those are, when my mom told me about that, I was like, he remembered me, he really cared about me.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal to me. That never left me. And it's funny because as I got older, I started seeing more of his movies, and I was buying some of his old original movie posters and collecting stuff on James Cagney, and I don't know, there was something about him that I felt a connection to him that I never forgot. And I wanted to share it with everybody.
And it sounds like you made quite an impact on him too, for him to bring that up to your mother. So. That's just such a really magical moment.
Yeah, I hope so. He still has.
We'll take a
take a break.
Yeah. Too much sound. Oh wait. Pause it real quick. Whoop. Sip. Oh, I forgot. I got carbonated water. Surprised. I was like, oh. All right. Get that out. Okay. There we go. Okay. So has anyone from Cagney's family read the book?
As a matter of fact, his grandson read the book, Jonathan Cagney. Mm-hmm. And Jonathan contacted me and mentioned that he had picked up the book, and he thanked me for making it. And I was flattered. I said, so Jonathan, that means more to me than anything. I said, I'd be happy to sign it for you. I said, please send it to me, and if you need another copy, please let me know. He was wonderful.
That's so touching.
I was really moved by that. That was a big compliment to me coming from his grandson. Because it's strange. I didn't know how to. I wanted to say, God, I wish that, did you have the same experience with your grandfather? And, he said, I really can't say that I remember spending a lot of time with him. But, he did see him. But, it was just my time with him happened by accident. It wasn't planned. So, and as you know in life, sometimes the most amazing experiences happen when you least expect it.
Absolutely.
You don't plan it.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it was just I was flattered that he reached out to me, and my wish is that I can continue to keep his legacy alive, that maybe I can share a side of James Cagney that people may not have known about, and that he was just this really wonderful man, and wasn't the gangster actor or the Mr.
Right.
Showman all the time that people thought he was.
That was a job.
And
yeah.
that was his job that he
Yep.
did,
Yep.
He viewed work as just a paycheck. This
Yep.
is what I do for a living. He did it very well. He was a total pro, but he didn't bring it home with him.
Right.
His life was his wife, his family, his Morgan horses, farming, the environment, and painting. That's really what his life was.
Just well-rounded.
Spending time back in his farm in New York, or Martha's Vineyard, and that was his life. So
Just fascinating, and I
Yeah.
can only imagine being his grandson. Reading the book and seeing this side of him that maybe he didn't know as well or have as much insight to.
Yeah.
It's like losing. My mom passed when I was 12, and whenever I hear a story about her from someone, whenever people hear stories about their loved ones who've passed in general,
Mhm.
you almost feel like you get another little piece of the puzzle. So that had to be kind of really special for his grandson.
Yeah, if people tell me stories about my dad, that was their experience and something that happened to them through their travels of working with him that was different, that was unique, something I'd never heard about, it always makes me feel like, again, the spirit of my dad lives on through people's experiences with him that they had.
Exactly.
And that's how I view, somebody physically may not be there anymore to be there with you, but they're there in other ways. And
I believe that, and
I'm a big proponent of that as far as just the way life works and how things evolve after people die.
Yeah, and I think the spirit never leaves,
No.
and people don't die in the hearts of their loved ones.
Right.
They kind of go on. And so I'm writing a book right now about this specifically with people who passed in showbiz, and
Yeah.
it's like the memories.
They live on in other ways, and
Yeah.
their spirit is very much alive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you find
Yeah.
in your family and other family members and your daughter, anyone, little pieces of like your dad or
Yeah.
other people who've
All the
passed,
time.
like that's got to be so. Do you just catch yourself and go, oh, okay,
Oh, yeah.
there's that thing that they
Oh yeah, I see it a lot with my daughter.
Yeah.
In ways that she's developing as she's about to be 13, and there's things about her that are characteristic of my father and certainly of my mother.
so great.
And it's amazing to see it get handed down to another generation.
Right.
I know that through me, my dad left a lot of traits with me through DNA that he left, and I feel him all the time. But I also have a lot of my mother too. So, I've got the best of both worlds between my mother and father, and I'm really, really fortunate and very blessed from that standpoint. And I talk about it with my brothers all the time, and I see it in their kids. So it's pretty remarkable how genes work.
It's a good
And,
balance.
it's great.
Talking about genes, old Hollywood, you're also interested in old Hollywood and vintage,
Oh yeah.
Things, and old movie posters. When I read the book
Old
too.
suits?
Yeah, exactly. A 1930s suit in a
Yeah.
1930s restaurant today.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
completely
I've had a
on
lot of
point.
antique cars through the years. My first car was a 1929 Model A Ford
Was that in LA?
in Beverly Hills. I was going to Beverly Hills
You
High
were
School.
driving around a model of
I was
Ford.
driving a Model A Ford to Beverly Hills High School.
What did the kids think of that?
They kind of thought it was cool, but they also thought, why is this guy driving an old Model A Ford, like from the Waltons? Because I loved old cars.
Yes.
I was an old soul when I was born. I had old National Geographics when I was 9 years old in my bedroom from the 1930s. And
Yeah.
my interest was always 40 years or 30 years before my time.
I can relate.
And my
Yep.
dad was very much the same way, so I think a lot of that was handed down to me from my dad. That was the influence that he had on me with his connection to the past absolutely rubbed off on me as his son. And I, it's just part of who I am. my house is all decorated in 1920s, 30s Art Deco stuff, and I don't know. I mean, through the years, I only had antique cars. I now have a newer car, but I've had 25 to 30 antique cars from the 1920s and 30s.
Oh my gosh.
And that's all I drove.
A lot of maintenance in those.
Yeah.
A lot
One of the reasons
maintenance.
why I have a newer car now.
Same. I almost got a classic that my dad's like, no,
Yeah.
don't do it. I was like, well, I want it.
Yeah.
But
I have a love for the past, and I certainly have a love for old Hollywood. I was born into a Hollywood family and raised in Hollywood, or in the business of Hollywood, and so. But I cherish the history of not just Hollywood. I cherish the history of this town, of where I live. I cherish the history of so many things. I'm involved with the Los Angeles Police Museum. I'm on the board of directors for the Police Museum. I love the history of the city.
Where is the police museum?
It's in Highland Park.
Okay, I didn't even know that existed.
It's the archives are housed in the 1920s police station, former police station. And it's pretty cool. They do a lot of filming there, and it's a historical building. And I've been somewhat instrumental in creating new exhibits there. And I brought the Adam 12 exhibit there, and me and a friend of mine, who's a sergeant with LAPD, and Kevin Allmeyer, helped me put that display together. And so it's been fun.
What's your favorite historical place in the city?
For a long time, my favorite historical place was City Hall, believe it or not. The original
That's
City
a good
Hall.
answer.
It was the tallest building in downtown Los Angeles. I love the architecture of City Hall. It was built in 1928. I'm a big fan of Dragnet, Jack Webb, and all that kind of stuff. But I have several buildings. As a kid growing up in Beverly Hills, I used to hang out at the Greystone Mansion.
Yes,
I used to ride my bike up there and crawl into the window when it was the time you could do that, and go through the whole house. And so I have a huge love for architecture. I dated a girl in high school that lived in the Harold Lloyd estate.
Oh my gosh.
So I spent, many afternoons at her house. And there's a number of buildings in Los Angeles that I love. I love the old Bullock-Wilshire, Art Deco Bullock-Wilshire.
How could you not? Oh
Built
my
in
gosh.
1927, 1928.
Gorgeous.
I'm a member of the Art Deco LA Society. So I love the Oviatt building in downtown Los Angeles, which is an old Art Deco building.
That's good
I have a huge love for Art Deco, French Art Deco specifically, but I love Art Deco everywhere, really. It's a beautiful form of art.
Architecture is a good interest, especially historically, because it literally puts you there.
Absolutely.
It's you're there.
Yeah.
It's like how you feel when you're inside the Formosa. It's like
right.
You can imagine
Sitting in the
things.
Formosa.
Sinatra, Marilyn, everybody. They used to come here after they were done working across the street on the lot and come in for drinks, and all the mob guys. And,
exactly.
There's so much. There's something we've got to show you after. Maybe we'll get a little video of it. I think you'll enjoy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just history is alive.
Oh, completely. There's a lot of history in Los Angeles too that a lot of people may not even be aware of.
Right, right.
Whether it be, believe it or not, there's a lot of mob history here.
Yes.
And it's not just
We're
Chicago
sitting
that's
in it.
mob history.
Oh yeah, no, it's a lot.
Hollywood history and all kinds of stuff. I remember when I would go to Lake Hollywood, I would run around the perimeter of Lake Hollywood and I'd see the old Bugsy Siegel house that used to be owned by Madonna.
Yeah. Is that like a pink house?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it is. Well, it was when she lived there. Yeah.
It was incredible. I remember as a kid,
that was his.
I remember growing up and seeing the old Hollywood sign that was falling down, and I remember trying to hike up to it.
Really?
Yeah. And see if I could grab a piece of the Hollywood sign that was falling down, They finally raised the money and restored it, but because it used to say Hollywood Land.
I know.
It was a real estate sign.
I love
for real estate.
All those old photos, and they dropped it,
Yeah.
But it was cool. I liked that.
Yeah. Anyway, I have a lot of great fond memories of growing up here, and and in Beverly Hills. I just did a growing up in Beverly Hills podcast yesterday, which was fun. And yeah.
What do you? I know the answer, but it's God. The houses that they're starting to demolish to put up new ones, like Lucille Ball's, on Roxbury.
It's horrible.
It's like
the Roxbury Drive house. The old. They tore down Jimmy Stewart's house.
I know. I have Jimmy Stewart on my arm. Jimmy.
Yeah.
Love Jimmy Stewart.
It's
I know.
Unfortunate.
It was.
It's really unfortunate. The answer to that question is that it saddens me. Yes.
No.
I wish that there was. I wish that developers and people that were buying these properties up had better love for history and to keep them alive. I understand they may not be, set up in such a way where financially it's not conducive to what they need, or that it, but it's, I don't know. The problem is that once the history is gone, it's gone.
And the history made this town. The history made it what it is. I'm not a big fan of what it is today, but it's made Los Angeles, as a whole, what it is.
Absolutely,
The film industry. Have you visited the Hollywood Heritage Museum?
I have.
It's a
and
good
I love
place.
it. I love it.
And it's one of the first film studios
Yeah.
that exists.
The one across from the Hollywood Bowl?
Yeah. I've done a little bit
yeah.
of things there, and it's just every time you walk into these, this old barn.
They actually have something that I donated there.
What is it?
They have a piece of the Hollywood sign that
Really?
was made. It's a little mini Hollywood sign made from the original 1923 wood.
Wow,
That
I did not
had
know
fallen
that.
down. Yeah.
I've got to check that out.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I donated it to them many years ago.
That's very apropos that it's made, a little Hollywood sign made from the Hollywood sign.
Yeah.
That's very meta. It's very cool. Oh my goodness.
It's a great place.
What do you think the importance, in your own opinion, the importance of the history being preserved is? Why is it important that we don't forget classic Hollywood?
Because I think that is ultimately what, Hollywood didn't just appear. Hollywood was a process of all these incredible films being made that developed, that became that changed, and how first of all, you can't really have a full understanding of what film is today unless you know how film was developed and how what it came from.
Going back to mutoscopes.
So I think that you need to have an understanding of that. I think it'll give you more insight into what you are doing as a young aspiring filmmaker today. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at every great director, whether it be a guy like Spielberg or any of the great directors that have made their mark in film, they all have a love for the history of film.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Quentin Tarantino has a big love for the history of Hollywood,
he's restoring.
He's always
the vista.
restoring something, and look at how great his movies are. Now, you can't say that every great filmmaker, doesn't necessarily need to know the history of Hollywood or cinema. That may be true, but I think it gives you more insight and more depth into what you want to accomplish.
Absolutely.
And I just think that if we take it away and if we erase it, it's not going to help the generation that is this generation that's trying to establish themselves as a director, as an actor, as a director of photography, as a whatever it may be, a makeup artist, as somebody who wants to make their mark in this business, whether it be in television or film. And that's just my perception of it, or my take on it. And it's given me, my love for history has given me an understanding and an insight into how things are done today. And I don't necessarily agree with a lot of how things are unfolding today, but I understand.
We're in the middle of a writer's strike.
Yeah, and I understand that change can be a good thing sometimes, and that. But I'm a big proponent of keeping the history alive and bringing it to and teaching people with history.
I agree.
So they understand.
I think in order to know where you're going, you've got to know where you've been. You know,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where if you have a passion, whatever it is, if you have a passion, if you have a niche, if you have some kind of thing that you're trying to do, you need to go back to the sources, to the firsts who
Absolutely.
did it, and
Yeah.
understand, kind of break it down, you know, work backwards,
That's
you know, to truly understand it, because
Yeah.
it just, you know, that's why classics, you know, that's the biggest thing. It's like the dialogue, the cinematography, the way that things were written, the way that things were shot, the ways that they were distributed. You know, it was a whole other world, and in some facets, a lost art. You know,
Oh, yeah.
compared to today.
Very much so.
And I think you know
There's a certain rawness that they had, and where they were able to, you know, you hear a lot of people talking about AI now and how that is going to be the new platform to deliver
right.
whatever it may be, a film, and again, I believe that you have to, art comes from starting from scratch and creating something, and when it suddenly is then generated now because of
A machine.
a machine doing it,
There's no
it takes
heart.
it to
There's
a
no
different,
soul.
It takes it to a different level.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
No, I completely
I
agree.
have a hard time biting into that one.
Yeah, I'm not with it. You know, it's
Yeah.
like art to me, whether it's a song, whether it's an actor, whether it's, you know, whatever it is, whoever it is, you know, the blood, the sweat, the callousness, the trials, the errors, the wins, the losses, these culminated things make these people who they are.
That's right.
Make the art what it becomes.
That's right.
And you just can't do that with a machine.
No,
You know?
no, you can't.
It's you
Yeah.
know, interesting times ahead.
Yeah,
to
it is
see how
really
it,
interesting times.
see
I don't
it,
think it's
yeah.
going to happen right away.
No.
I think films are going to always the tools and all the elements that make a movie.
Right,
I think
right.
will never be taken away completely. And there's too many great artists out there and people that bring so many wonderful things to the big screen.
Agreed.
And we want to keep that alive. And so, you know, I'm optimistic.
What are some of your favorite classic films?
It's a Wonderful Life. It's one of my favorite classic films. Certainly Yankee Doodle Dandy, James Cagney movie. A lot of horror movies that I love. I love some of the old Universal horror movies.
The classics, yeah. You seen The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari?
No.
Oh my gosh, 1923, I want to say.
Really?
It's silent with Conrad Veidt.
Oh, I love Conrad.
Gotta watch it.
Casablanca,
Gotta.
speaking of Conrad.
Yep, absolutely.
I like some great Charlie Chaplin movies. The Kid.
Of course, City Lights
yeah.
and all that. It's good stuff.
I'm a big Charlie Chaplin fan.
Hollywood Heritage has some of his stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Things.
I love some of the early Charlie Chaplin movies.
It's amazing.
Harold Lloyd.
Yes.
Harold Lloyd movies.
I love all of that United Artists stuff, Mary Pickford
Great
and
stuff.
Chaplin. That
Great
whole
stuff.
era was.
You know, I had a chance to meet
Groundbreaking.
Betty Davis before she passed away.
Now you were holding out.
I know.
Okay, what was that?
It just hit me for some reason.
What was she
Oh
like?
my God, what a great day that was.
Yeah.
Well, my dad did a movie.
Is that the next book?
My dad did a movie with Betty Davis called Bunny O'Hare with
Yes.
Ernest Borgnine and Betty Davis and my father.
Just a
And,
couple, people.
Yeah, she was wonderful.
Yeah.
She was great. I met her. I was at a roast for Clint Eastwood
Oh my
and
gosh.
Julio Iglesias, out of all people.
Wow.
And she attended that roast.
Interesting.
And Joanne Carson, who had been married to Johnny Carson, took me there.
I love Johnny Carson.
And Joanne had some great stories. Anyway, but I went there and that was a lot of fun.
I
In
bet.
fact, Lucille Ball was there.
Yes.
It was a wonderful, wonderful night.
That's some Great
She was
stuff.
great. I sat at a table with Brooke Shields and Joanne, and Brooke's mother was there, and that was a lot of fun.
Sounds like a great evening, a melting pot of like characters and personalities.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of like the Dean Martin roasts. So when you see all those people get together and just kind of, do their thing, I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But yes.
I was very lucky and fortunate to have met some wonderful old actors of the really old Hollywood regime.
Yeah.
And Joan Carson played a big part in that because I knew her for many years. I met Bob Hope, of course, knew Bob Hope a little bit.
I've got a story about Bob Hope. I know Patrick Wayne, who's the Duke, John Wayne's son. He's a friend of mine, and we were at dinner.
He lives in Toluca Lake.
Yes, so we were at dinner just a few weeks ago. We go to eat, and he tells me all these stories. He knows
He's a nice man.
I'm like a sponge, so he just goes at it. And
He's a great guy.
he told me this story how he was driving home, because Bob lived in Toluca Lake, and he would drive home sometimes at night, and he would find Bob when he was older, like out at night walking around the neighborhood, and he'd stop and he'd roll his window down. He'd go, "Uncle Bob, you need a ride home?" And he would.
Well, the funny thing is, the last time I saw Bob Hope was in front of Starbucks near Bob's Big Boy, coming out with his nurse was walking with him, and he walked in, and everybody sort of got up and bowed when he walked in. And as he was leaving, I followed him out, and I stopped. And his nurse was wearing a white jacket, and I said, "Would you let Mr. Hope know that my mom is Shirley Jones, and that I met him before and who I am?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, sure, hold on a second." He said, "Mr. Hope, this is Ryan Cassidy, Shirley Jones' son," and long story short, he was wonderful.
So
"Oh my God, nice to see you. How you doing? How's your mom doing?" Good.
So sweet. I love it. Was there anything else that you would like to share with us about the book, about old Hollywood?
I just want to say that I want to continue to bring old Hollywood and introduce to old Hollywood, whether it be through a James Cagney book or another book that maybe I may write at some point, into this generation and keep it alive. And I think you're doing a fabulous job of doing that.
Thank
by
you.
talking
Sincerely.
to all the people that are acquainted to old Hollywood in some way or another, and I want you to keep that up. And
I can't help it.
This
Got
was a
to.
book that was a real labor of love to make, and I hold it dear to my heart, and I really mean that.
Fabulous book.
Thank you.
You've put this. I think anytime someone can sit down and write something that is not even just a book, but a recount of memory. I mean, that's cemented forever now.
Yeah.
It's there, and
Yeah.
I think that's a powerful thing. So thank you so much for writing this book.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for having me here, and
of course.
thank you for talking about it.
Absolutely. I've got one more question I like to ask guests at the end of the episode. It's a curveball.
Yeah.
If you could be any character from The Wizard of Oz, who would you be and why?
The Cowardly Lion.
Really? Why?
I think because there's something about courage that we all think we may have, and we do have courage, but we always want a little bit more
Yeah.
to get through a situation in life.
Completely.
And he nailed it when he said, I just need courage. Because courage can allow you to identify situations and to walk through a situation that you would not have thought you could without that courage.
Second that. He had a pretty sweet mane too.
Oh, yeah.
He was good stuff.
And I got to meet Margaret Hamilton when I was a kid. She was on the Partridge Family, and she came over and had dinner at our house one night. She was a nice lady. So.
Fond memories.
But I don't think I'd want to be the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, I think I'm good on that too. Good stuff. Well, thank you, Ryan, so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us on the episode. And
Thank
until
you for
next
having
time, this has been Calling Old Hollywood. Where can guest listeners buy this book?
So this book can be ordered through Johnny Ray Miller's site, which is When We Were Singing.
Okay.
He's got his own site, and that's probably the best place to get it. And or you can go to Barnes & Noble or Amazon and buy it. But Johnny Ray Miller is my partner, and it might be best to order it through him.
And one more thing I want to touch on is this isn't just a children's book either.
No, this is an adult book. It's actually called a novelty book, if you will. It's for adults, and it's also for children, in that I think both adults and children can identify to it. Children are not going to know who James Cagney is, but they certainly are going to know who he is when they read it.
Definitely.
And there may be some adults that don't know who James Cagney is, but when you read it, you'll want to know who James Cagney is.
I definitely second that.
So it's a novelty book.
It's a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, this has been Calling Old Hollywood. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.